the great Monty Python irony of media coverage is it's not the journalist's job to promote your business or your book or your new show. It's the issues that sit behind the actual thing. That's the biggest mistake that we make.
Hey, welcome to Foundora Avenue, a podcast where I discuss with media founders who share their stories about how to run a startup and how to overcome the challenges of startup life, and plus discuss with ongoing news and trends about different topics that's going on in the startup industry. And I'm your host, Trayvon Toussaint. Now today I want to discuss about how to get your media business to the press. And you may be thinking, why on earth even bother try to get your business to traditional media? Due to the decline of it, and due to even with journalism, where not really a lot of people are reading as such. But I was wrong, as Kate Engler is the founder and CEO of Meet The Press Masterclass, which is based in Melbourne, Australia. And her purpose is to basically train founders to learn how to communicate to the media and also be able to pitch to journalists. And she has much experience in PR before she even started Meet The Press Masterclass, due to a variety of agencies she has been along to joining. And let's get right to it as I speak to Kate as she shares her lessons. Hey Kate, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. It's a real treat.
So to start off, that I ask my guests all the time is share to the audience what made you get into entrepreneurship focused in media and entertainment.
Well, I think the genesis of what I do now with my own business, which I've had for 24 years, really started when I was working in-house as an employed person inside PR agencies. And Australia is a very big country, and I've worked on both coasts of the country. And what I saw was just far too many super inspiring entrepreneurs that had amazing ideas, amazing products or services, and they were making an amazing difference to their clients and out in the community. And they would come into the agency so excited about what free media could give them and what being interviewed by a journalist, how that would elevate their credibility. And they'd be so excited by that. What they wouldn't be excited about was the ongoing monthly fees of $5,000, $6,000, $8,000 month after month after month after month. And so that just broke my little entrepreneurial heart one too many times. And I thought, this is rubbish. We need to do something about this. You know, as in Australia, as most around the world, entrepreneurs are the biggest employer group in our country. 97% of our country are employed in that small to medium business sector. So these are people that absolutely deserve all the coverage they can get. And so 13 years ago, I created the Meet The Press Masterclass, and that was really designed to remove the need for PR agencies and train people fully in how they can generate their own media coverage. So I guess to your point about your question about what shifted me to the entrepreneurial space away from the employed space, it was just these gorgeous folk who were doing such amazing things with their life. And I just felt they needed a platform and more coverage than they were able to harness through an expensive PR agency.
Now, what major problem would you say did you see in public relations that made you found Meet the Press Masterclass?
Well, I think it's that affordability piece, right? You know, most small businesses, a lot of them bootstrap their own start. Many of them don't do a cap raise. They really are bootstrapping it themselves. And having that barrier to entry be ongoing monthly agency fees, I felt that was it excluded a lot more businesses than it included.
Before we discuss into pitching to journalists and not being salesy, when I researched you of your business, I was interested how you focus on the mission of businesses pitching to journalists. And it got me thinking that, wait a minute, but, through the age of media now, journalism is kind of like declining, and some people are less reading articles, and now there's influencers people can promote their business to, and like Facebook ads that they can use. So to boil all of that down, why are journalists still worth reaching out to have them talk about one's entertainment business to the public?
Sure. So I'm of the belief that the vast majority of journalists are really good people trying to tell a really great story. That is my firm belief. I love the journalists that we work with. They're all such generous, curious. What I love about journalists is their inherent curiosity. And it is my firm belief that the bulk of journalists in the world have that commitment to the truth and have that commitment to sharing great content with their viewers, readers, or listeners. There's a pool of journalists, of course, that we all know about that, maybe aren't as wedded to the truth as others, but those that we deal with. I hold that belief firmly that journalists are really the conduit between information and the general public. The news cycle is definitely a 24/7 news cycle. There's no getting away from that. It's, gone are the days where the newspaper was printed once per day and you picked it up at 4 a.m. on the street and there was no more news until 4 a.m. the next day. Gone are those days. So the news cycle is definitely 24/7. And sadly, there are less and less journalists to do that. There's, I'm not sure about your country, but there's often talk about redundancies across the media landscape here in Australia. So more content to fill with less journalists to fill it. And that is where a symbiotic relationship between the journalist and the business owner or the entertainer themselves can yield incredible benefit for both. And that's genuinely what you're going for. You're going for that. I know it's cliche, but you're going for that win-win where the journalist gets a great yarn and the business gets showcased as the expert that they are.
To tie into like pitching to journalists, what is consider your pitch structure that would attract journalists who would want to write about one's media entertainment startup?
Sure. So the biggest mistake that business owners, people in entertainment, or authors make is they're very in love with their thing, whatever their thing or their latest project is. And the great Monty Python irony, I'm not sure if you're a Monty Python fan, but my boys and I are massive Monty Python fans. The great Monty Python irony of media coverage is it's not the journalist's job to promote your business or your book or your new show. It's the issues that sit behind the actual thing. That's the biggest mistake that we make, that people are so in love with their business, and they should be. I think if you're not in love with your business, get in a different one, because you should be in love with your business. But we need to momentarily fall out of love with our business, the thing that's at the business that sits behind the logo, right? And look at what issues does the business solve? What are the issues that sit behind the product or the service? That's really the mental exercise of pitching to a journalist.
I was going to elaborate with you on that, as in why journalists are not meant to promote your business. And it's what is their primary case in today's age now?
Well, we need to think through a lens of news they can use. And by they, we mean both the journalists, but also their viewers or readers or listeners, their audiences. Journalists' job is to inform. It's the advertising department's job to sell you space and promote your product or service. That advertising department is a very different beast from the editorial department. And if people collapse the two, that's when they end up in the trash can and the journalist doesn't follow through on a story with them or about them. So it's really important to have that distinction clearly in one's mind so that the language that you use is appropriate for the audience to whom you are pitching. And in the case of journalists and media, there is an audience of one, and that is the journalist. Even if you're pitching it out to 10 journalists, your audience for that pitch is not the end user, it's the journalist. So having that laser focus and the distinction between advertising and editorial, and then having the laser focus about what the journalists actually want from you, which, as I said before, is the issues behind the thing, that's a far more effective way to go about it.
So for an entertainment startup entrepreneur, how would they know how to figure out to communicate a certain tone when pitching to the journalist?
Yeah, I think there's no one size fits all, and that's another really key part about approaching the media. It's very much on a case by case basis, and it can even be governed by the timing of the pitch and what else is happening in the zeitgeist of whatever community or country you happen to be in, because often, if there's an issue present in the media that you can make a comment on, we call that newsjacking. It's like hijacking the news, newsjacking. So someone starting out in the entertainment industry should not only look at what they are doing, often it's their backstory that resonates. For example, I've worked with a gorgeous young male model here in Australia. He's all of about 20, 21. He's the same age as my boys. And he literally was working in a car dealership and got scouted from the car dealership and asked to do some test shoots, which he did and successful. And he's walked Milan, he's walked New York. He's this gorgeous young creature that's got his life ahead of him. But it wasn't what he was doing that initially attracted the journalist's attention. It was the backstory of how he got to what he is doing now. So I would really encourage anybody who's starting out in the entertainment industry to really embrace the backstory. No journalist wants to know, I did this and it was great. I did that and it was great. And then I went to Milan and it was great. And then I went to New York and it was great. Life's just great. They don't want to know that. They want the light and the shade, as they did with this gorgeous young man, Ethan. He was literally working in a car dealership, and now look at where he's landed. So that bit of the story, that backstory, the story that sits behind the flashy, sexy photographs that you see, that is where the gold lives for really anybody in the entertainment industry.
So with that, it's like they don't want that salesy, transactional type of feeling. And to add with that, I remember you said a particular quote that pitching to a journalist isn't a sales pitch, which is, I absolutely agree with you with that. But I was also curious as in, why do you think media entertainment founders think they need to be salesy or tend to forget to have the human element?
I think it's the default, right? If they've been accustomed to languaging what they do in a certain way for a long period of time, that is the default language, the default key messages, the default benefits. So it really is pushing pause on all of that and giving yourself some perspective and some distance about what lives behind the flashy pictures or the flashy logo. That's really where the gold lives. It's not, yes, you need to pitch to the journalist, but you're not selling them what you've got. That's the big distinction.
So being basically you, the authenticity.
Authenticity goes a long way. And it's not, I'm going to pretend to be authentic. It is, because that's the antithesis, right? It is actually getting raw and real and sharing your authenticity in a way that lands with the journalist and their potential audiences, whether they're readers, viewers, listeners. There's got to be a fit, right? So that's why, again, there's no one size fits all.
Speaking of fit, as you mentioned, so with connecting with the journalists, where do media entertainment founders find the right journalists to share their business?
Yeah, well, I think it's about what media is being consumed by the ultimate end people that you want to get to. So yes, there's all sorts of media and entertainment industry publications, blogs, podcasts. So it's about, it's a little bit of sweat equity. There's no getting around the fact that you must, I hesitate to say must, but you really must. I don't want to tell people what to do. You are well advised to research the media outlet before pitching to them. If it's a site and you have a new album or a new play that might be about domestic violence, right? Go out to that particular media outlet, search for the term domestic violence, see what they've covered on this topic in the past, and then you want to what we call go for the gap. You can't pitch something they've already covered. So it's about a bit of sweat equity and doing a bit of legwork. And all of the journalists that we deal with at the Meet the Press Masterclass all say all of the time, please make sure you've read us or listened to us or watched us before you pitch to us. So you know the tone of the publication or the program, what they cover, how they cover it, what they like to focus on. For example, if you're ever pitching to Breakfast TV, they really love 5 top tips. So if you know that going in and you've watched the program and you know that they often have, 5 top tips to make it in show business, or 5 top tips to get your kids to eat more veggies, or 5 top tips to get a better deal on your insurance, all of their interviews with experts will anchor back to a top 5 tips or hints or advice. So if you know that going in, you can include those 5 tips as part of your pitch. So knowing what the media wants and showing that you're a really good fit for them is vital.
What would you say for someone that is trying to figure out, because I feel like with some entertainment founders, they think I need to be on the biggest media coverage. Like one of the biggest here is like Bloomberg. I don't know if Bloomberg is there in Australia. Yes. Oh, it is. Okay. So I don't only need to be on there, and I don't need to be on the small local media ones. What would you advise with that?
That is such a great question. And I'll refer back to my model friend, right? When he first pitched that story, it was picked up by his local suburban newspaper. It was then picked up by one of the state-based major daily newspapers that was then picked up by one of our national TV networks. And the reason for that, and your listeners might want to write this down, media consumes other media. So what I mean by that is the producers of those news programs or breakfast TV programs, they're having a look through the major daily papers and the major local papers of their area to see what's happening in the news. They are, after all, these breakfast programs are, after all, news-based programs. News and entertainment, sure, but at the top of the hour and the bottom of the hour, they're reporting on the news. So they need to be across what is in the news that day. So they're always looking at other media and seeing what's been featured in there and saying, oh, actually, that kid looks great. Let's get him on for a chat, which is exactly what happened with young Ethan and one of our national broadcasters. So so that's the main overarching. Media consumes other media. The other reason why it's a really great option to go for those smaller local papers is it's really great practice. For someone's first media dance to be on 60 Minutes, that's quite a big dance for the first media interview, right? So we must always value each level of the media, knowing that there's a purpose for each program or publication, and that we will be flexing our muscle, and also that big message that media consumes other media.
Oh, as in, for instance, as an media entertainment founder, it's also get to the next level, become a big company, hopefully go IPO someday. And I feel like with some founders, they also tend to think long term, as in getting into other markets. And I feel like there's different type of journalists with that. Like, for example, with Spotify, they were music company. Now they're in podcast originals, and now they're into audio, all type of stuff. For someone, how would they try to frame a good long-term relationship with those journalists? Like, for instance, I'm a music record label company, and I want to be successful in music. Got my relationship with those journalists, but I'm also thinking about I want to also launch a venture in gaming, but I want to keep those long relationships with those journalists.
I think the key to any long-term relationship, but particularly that with the journalists, is always tell the truth, always give them great content. And what I mean by content is a really solid, strong pitch rather than an ad. And we've talked about that earlier. It is about that consistency. You know, we have a business editor here in Australia, and he met one of our masterclass graduates in 2020. She is still a regular contributor to him because she was like clockwork. She was reliable. She gave him what she said she was going to give him on the date that she said she would give it to him, time and time and time and time and time and time again. So he could kind of take her to the bank. He could kind of really rely on the fact that she was reliable, she was consistent, and she was continually pitching to him content that resonated with his audience. So consistency is key. Manners, you know, I'm not entirely sure where some people's manners have gone, but please and thank you go a long way. Journalists get 50, 100, 500, 1,000 pitches each day, some of them. How do you stand out from the flock? Some people, we see this all around the world, are very entitled, and they bring that entitled energy. Well, you ran this on me last time. Why don't you run it on me this time? Well, that attitude alone is enough to have you put in the bin. So grace, manners, courtesy, and consistency. And content is the fifth one. Good content.
Would you say for those journalists that you want to keep in touch in the future, should they also pitch, since you mentioned content, of what they're doing, or just focus on the written pitch and just hope for the best?
Well, I think the written pitch is the number one door opener, right? And then when you get into a dialogue, what really the one job that a pitch or a media release has is to have the journalist lean in, to energetically lean in and want to know more. That interview time of them speaking with you to get more information over and above what you've put in the pitch, that is the opportunity to showcase other things you might have planned, other things in the pipeline, other deals you're working on, and some of your backstory as well. People often make the mistake in their pitch of trying to give the journalist everything and hope that the journalist will find a piece of gold in there somewhere. And the reality is journalists don't have the time to read every word of every pitch that they receive. That's why the headline needs to be absolutely banging. We call that an unwalk pastable headline. It's a made up word, just go with it. It means the journalist literally can't walk past what it is you're saying. That is the number one most important ingredient in your pitch. But the journalist won't read every word from every pitch. They'll have a look at the headline, maybe the first par, and that will be where they decide if they will have a chat with you or not. So that chat is the opportunity for you to bring other elements of what you're doing to life rather than sending them a 5-page thing that tells them everything, because it just won't get read and chances are it'll end you up in the trash can.
Oh, wow. Do not want that.
We do not want that. We do not want that.
So to wrap things up, there's 2 questions I ask all my guests. So the first one is, name one of your favorite media and entertainment entrepreneurs and why.
I'm tempted to say Jimmy Kimmel because he's really stood his ground recently, but I think more broadly, I think what Brene Brown has done with her media profile has been fantastic. She was she's a researcher and a lecturer at a university in Texas. She did one TED talk that blew up her profile, which was awesome. And now she really uses the media very strategically. So she's not, I think she's entertaining, but I guess you wouldn't call her an entertainer. And but if we're talking that mainstream entertainer type person, it's really hard to go past Jason Sudeikis with what he's done with Ted Lasso and that cult following, and really the fan demand for them to go back to the studio for the 4th season is just, I love everything he and that program stood for. I love the collaborative nature of it. I love the collegiate bonding that they clearly all genuinely have with one another. They clearly love what they do. They've made a great, great product, and the fans have responded by mutinying when they tried to stop filming it, which has been great. So that's a personal favorite of mine.
Love it. Love it. So in a brief 1 sentence, 3 to 6 words, what would you say to listeners and viewers, a major pointer on your coverage blueprint they must know?
Don't say no for them. And what I mean by that, lots of people hold themselves back. Oh, I can't pitch to that editor. They'll probably say no. Oh, I can't approach that producer. They'll probably say no. My advice is don't say no for them. Have a pitch. If they say no, you're no worse off. But please, please, please don't say no for them.
Before I let you go, please share in regards to some upcoming events that you have with the masterclass.
Well, we run the masterclass twice per year in Australia, once in Sydney in May and once in Melbourne in October. But for those folk not in Australia, we do have an online program called Your Publicity Lab. So you can find all of that information at www.meetthepressmasterclass.com.au.
It was a pleasure having you on the show, Kate.
So great to be with you. Thank you for having me.
I'd like to thank Kate for joining the show and dropping her lessons. Feel free to like and subscribe to the show and share this with someone who would be useful for them to take their media startup to the next level, and to aspiring media founders. And I will see you Friday.